Neil, how are you tonight?
I'm well, thank you. Thank you, Alex. Great to be here. How
I'm
you doing?
fantastic, man. It's Friday evening, so like, how can I be upset about anything? And I'm training for a
Yeah.
marathon, so tomorrow's an easy run day, not some grueling 18, 19-mile run. So like, I'm excited, man. I'm feeling good.
Oh, good for you. I used to jog on a regular basis, and I don't anymore.
There's nothing
It's a
wrong with
long
that. There's
story,
nothing
but
wrong
I
with that.
miss it. I do other cardio stuff, but I do miss it. That the natural high, the cadence you get from other folks on the run. So good for you. Way to
Thank you,
go.
thank you. Well, Neil, how about you? If you don't mind, just tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, and what you've been up to over the last couple of years. And then I like to usually go back to kind of the start of this thing, like how did you get into this field, and how did you arrive at where you are currently?
Hey, Alex, thank you very much. So I'm a mutt. I like to burrow into a lot of different things, right? I'm too interested in too many things, as my business partners
Mm,
tell me. I am based at the University of Toronto, which is really hot for AI
mm,
and computer science and tech right now. But beyond the university, I write books. So my last book was called Accelerated Minds, about the psychology of entrepreneurship,
mm,
and it was published in North America by Sutherland, and in Japan it was released by a publisher called Toyo Kaizai, and they gave it the title Entrepreneurship Addiction.
mm.
And then beyond that, I run my own little book publishing company. I work with a whole range of startups in Canada and the United States, and I talk to entrepreneurs in different fields all the time, just trying to learn from folks.
Mm. How did you at first get into this field of entrepreneurship? Was there some one particular moment, or was it a slow progression for you?
Yeah, function of necessity meets opportunity. So, as I say, based at the university, in the early 2000s, we were doing a lot of work using social media to understand sentiment in the Middle East in particular. We got a lot of fame for having predicted the fall of Mubarak in in what was called the Arab Spring.
Yep, yep.
And then that sprung into a company called Real Time Interactive Worldwide Intelligence, selling unique data streams to finance, government, consumer packaged goods. And then sort of, yeah, fell into that. It was opportunity, and I really enjoyed the chase and things I actually didn't appreciate. I loved so much, like
Mm.
sales. And then, yeah, did that for 11 years. The company went public on a bunch of exchanges, and I stepped down in 2021 and wrote this book on entrepreneurial psychology. It twinned by my interest in entrepreneurship and my dad's research in dopamine and how it works in the brain. And so I wrote that book, and then I teamed up with my own publisher and started this little publishing business.
You just went from I was at the university to went public in like 60 seconds, Neil. You gotta give me a little more context than that. So you were
Yeah,
doing
there's
you research essentially
yeah.
on social
Yeah.
media and
So
its
what
impact on what, social movements kind of?
yeah. Yeah, so we had a little think tank. It was called the Innovation Cell. And it's based off a model that BMW used, where you celebrate things not working as well as things
Okay.
working. And then we had a lot of demand for this interesting little product that we were putting together, which was essentially using the architecture of the internet to pick up on what people who don't normally answer surveys in, say, China or India or anywhere around the world are thinking, saying, doing. And then we applied it to different health and social movement initiatives, published a bunch of things. And some investors came at me and said, "Hey, this could be a company." I thought, wow, that's kind of
Mm.
interesting. My funding blew up. It was no longer there. And I said, okay, this is neat. Let's go forward. I took it forward as a private company, got some amazing people around me, and we built it up, based in Canada, but really basing most of our clients were
And
international,
what would be like an
American.
example of a client and what they were seeking potentially from you?
Yeah, so I mean, it just in finance, so in the finance sector, for example, there are lots of uh, household name institutions. I have to be sensitive to
Yeah,
which
of
ones were
course.
under confidentiality. who wanted a sense of where things were going with the 2016 Trump election.
Interesting.
So we did a lot of global macro event prediction, not only in America but all over Europe, Brexit, you name it. Then,
And you're
but
gathering that
also in
mostly based on social media sentiment, and you're trying to take that and
we
digest it?
we started doing that. And I say we, it's been a while, but we started doing it that way. And then I invented something called random domain intercept technology, which is now called random domain engagement or random device engagement, where what you're doing is you're rotating vacant digital properties on the web, and you're creating essentially a digital infrastructure that's statistically beautiful, right? So it's representative of the internet population in any city, any region, any country of the world with internet access. And so it's a statistical beauty. And then what makes it really cool too is that the people answering your surveys are not the people that are answering, typical media surveys. And so that's what made us distinctive and certainly very accomplished in terms of predicting uh, public events. But then beyond that, that's what we got a lot of acclaim for. But we did a lot of other stuff for finance institutions in particular who wanted to understand
Mm,
China. So little like tier one, like people have a sense of okay, what's happening in China, but what really matters in China is like 10, 12 countries, right? So you need to understand what's going on in the tier one big cities, tier two, tier three, tier four in
hmm,
terms of buying behavior, what young women are finding fashionable at any given moment, gold purchasing behavior. This is the kind of stuff finance companies were interested
mm,
in. I didn't know anything about Wall Street before I got into it. I love learning about new industries. Yeah, international NGOs were a big client base of ours because they had to get into Africa, different parts of Africa to understand logistics, supply chain stuff. And then we had a bunch of consumer packaged goods as well.
mm.
So yeah, so I did that, and then I found the intensity of the capital markets in particular were just kind of not for me.
Mm.
So yeah, so I stepped down as CEO and continued a bit with the company doing other stuff, and then went on and do the things I do with books and back at the university.
Why did you go public, and what was that process like?
So the public thing is interesting. So a lot of people they associate going public with a liquidity event and things like that. But in my mind, okay, and we are, I guess, unique in this regard. Okay, so in my mind, the key thing was access. We had to get access to certain capital and certain things. And at the time, we had a very well established hedge fund out of New York that could only invest in public vehicles. Then, at the same time, simultaneously, it was kind of interesting. All our clients at the beginning were big international NGOs. And so when we would apply for a grant or the government, when we would apply for grants, we would have to bear everything, and it was way more onerous than being a public issuer. So we were kind of sitting there going, okay, well, we could sit around and entertain potential M&A opportunities because that was what was really going on in that data analytics, big data space back
Mhm.
then in 2015, 2016, or we could actually go public on a junior market and enjoy this kind of access stuff. And who knows if it was the right decision? It was like two paths diverge in the wood. There were pros and there were cons. It is stressful to be a public market CEO, but at the same time, it's stressful to be a private company CEO. I think a lot of people exaggerate the distinctions between the two.
Interesting. So it just became not so fun once it became a public company for you?
Well, it's different, right? Like I go on podcasts, like, I would go on podcasts and media events all the time, and I would never use words that other CEOs would always use. So, and investors told me this, and I found this really funny. They would say, "Hey, Neil, I never hear you saying market cap, talking about your share price, or like a whole range of other things." And now I, of course, read about all the time when I look at capital market CEOs, and that was just my thing, right? I'm a founder operator kind of person. I like talking about the technology, the opportunity. I do enjoy talking about sales, whether it's whole range of different issues, go to market strategy, that kind of thing. But the kinds of things that you need to be engaged in were not my cup of tea. What you do is you hire people around you who are really good at that stuff and they enjoy it. And that's the key, right? It's all about the
Mhm.
team.
Okay. The fascinating. All right. So that kind of chapter, you move on at some capacity. I'm sure you're still tied into the company, but you're moving on kind of mentally.
Yeah. Oh, entirely. Like it actually it takes a while, right? So, and this is a big part of what I talk about in Accelerated Minds. Now it's called Entrepreneurship Addiction in Japan. But the big challenge for any entrepreneur who really invests a big part of their life into their baby, and it really is very much like a baby, it's very difficult to separate. Like your identity is so tied up to the company.
Mhm.
Like, you know, Alex, I'm sure, well, nowadays it's not Google, but if I popped your name into an AI, right, it would probably very much have
Oh yeah.
you and your company very much
It's not
connected,
gonna
right?
find anything about
And
my marathon prep and training, but it's certainly gonna find
yeah,
stuff about my company, Fast
yeah,
50, Inc. 5000 this.
right.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's amazing, right? That's amazing, and way to go on all those accomplishments. I know they're a lot harder than the way you rhyme them off. That's a lot of sweat there, but yeah, I mean, so there you go. So when you depart it, it's really difficult emotionally, because you're always reminded of it, right? You're always reminded of that connected layer, and to give it up, and that's why transitions are really tough. That's why people have a really hard time letting go. There's even this phenomenon in the research called success
Yeah.
depression,
Yeah.
where people, yeah, they leave whatever baby they've created, and okay, there's a big vacuum left to fill that they can't fill with other things, and that's often why they chase that next kind of high or
Yeah, it's
opportunity.
either the story about I don't remember which one because 'cause I'm, too old probably, but it's either the person who started Minecraft or the person who started Roblox, sold the company for like
Okay,
$1 billion, and
yeah.
he was still pretty young, like, late 20s kinda thing, and he was a single guy, so he did, like, what you would do when you're a new single young guy billionaire. He, like, went to Ibiza, and he's like, "I was partying, and staying up late, and I was getting on yachts, and I was, like, hanging out with girls," and he's like, "And that was fun for, like, 3 months." And then, like, I flew back home, and then I'm, like, texting my friends, like, "Hey, what are you up to?" And they're like, "It's Tuesday. I'm working." What do you mean?" They're like,
Right, right.
Yeah, I'm gonna be, like, done working at, like, 5 o'clock. I could maybe hang out with you, like, one day this week or something like that." And it was just like, "Oh, like, this it was the thing that you were so excited about, but the reality of it isn't quite what you were hoping for." You can only be on the beach drinking margaritas for so long, at least for most people, I think.
That's an interesting story. I mean, yeah, that it was one of the challenges with having commercial success at such a young age, right? I mean, same thing with investment success as well. There was this great Palestinian American writer. Sorry, of course, he's very prominent still. Nassim Nicholas
Oh, yeah.
Taleb. He wrote this book called The Black
Mhm.
Swan. And but my favorite book by him was actually his earlier book called Fooled by Randomness, where one of the problems with having commercial success as an investor really, really early. And I actually had that challenge, I should say, challenge and fortune is that you think you're so silly when like I was 26, you think that you can repeat
Yeah.
that, and then, and look, it literally was the dot-com boom, right? So yeah, it's an interesting challenge, and so you have to fill it with something else. I can't speak for this gentleman, but it's certainly a story I hear a lot.
Well, yeah, and you also talk about, you've literally been, like, rewarded and complimented your whole entrepreneurial life until you culminate in this big sale thing, and you're like, "I don't hardly know anybody else who's done a sale or, exit like this, like, I'm a genius. I'm so smart." And you've seen this, I'm sure, too.
Huh.
You're like, these people think they can just go out and replicate it. And sometimes, but not always. Like it's much harder to do it twice than it is to do it once. I think there was
That's
a
that's
book called
right.
"You Only Need to Get Rich Once." It's kind of like that. You only need to get rich once, but doing it twice or three times, that's when someone you go, that's an impressive entrepreneur. They have a system. They've thought through this thing.
Yeah, and I used to not take. It's funny. I never like this concept of serial entrepreneur. I kind of looked askance at it. I thought it was associated with serial crime perpetrators, right? But now I do get it, right? Like it you and I've been at entrepreneurship a long time, and most of it is moving enthusiastically, as Churchill said, would from one failure to the next.
Yeah,
Um but the yeah, you they're for the repeat founders, I have so much reverence toward, right? And then you look at someone like Elon Musk, whatever you may think of his politics, and oh my goodness, the rarity of
certainly.
what he has
Oh yeah.
done statistically is, and in fact, in Canada, so I co-teach a course on entrepreneurial storytelling, where we look at the great Canadian entrepreneurs. And there are some people who've done it two, three, four times, and it is extraordinary. Some of them they treated the first business almost like tuition to get into the and to kind of craft the model for the second venture. So I find the playbook model of entrepreneurship quite interesting. I never used to take it
Well, you talk
seriously.
about Elon Musk, but I'm sure the other one that you know about is Brad Jacobs, who has 8
Yeah.
separate billion-dollar companies. That
Right,
one's so
exactly.
interesting
I mean,
because he legitimately does have a system. Like, I look for an industry where I can go out and I can
uh,
roll up lots of smaller competitors and
right.
then bring them in, and they've just gotten super good at finding the industry first, and his industries are all, like, somewhat boring, like, uh
Oh, I'm a big fan of
Waste
boring.
Systems, United Rentals,
Yeah.
XPO, that's trucking, QXO, which I don't know much about that one, building products distribution industry. Super
Okay.
boring stuff, but, like, the the way he thinks about it and is able to find the industry, go out and start the process, actually pull these companies together, deploy the capital, and he actually talks about how he loves going public. He's like, "It's the best, you gotta go public." And it's like,
Right.
"Okay, well,
Right.
let's slow down." Like, that's
Yeah.
your pulse on it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's an interesting discussion in and of itself. The psychology of going public and what that means. Um, but yeah, no, no, no. I'm a big fan of boring. I actually like to say I specialize in industries not only that appear boring to others but are in decline. So the current one being books, trying to reinvent the book
Ah,
industry, but I'm in a real niche subset of the book industry, which is growing with a CAGR of 20% year over year. This sub
hmm,
industry, it's essentially hybrid books. So really interesting, especially in the States, it's really taking off. So basically, you got your author who's subsidizing the process, but you share the royalties in a different way. So you're both entrepreneurially embedded in the success of the business. It's not like vanity books. It's actually more traditional, the way books used to be published about 100 years
hmm.
ago. And then my last business I mentioned to you, yeah, that is effectively, it was a market research industry, which a lot of people glaze their eyes over, going, oh, boring, boring, boring. It's actually really interesting when an industry is in kind of decline or a bit boring. Um, I've heard a lot of people actually in Silicon Valley talking about this now, like in the context of AI, where I don't know, I'm no expert at all in AI, but a lot of people are betting the farm on boring AI companies, like companies chasing a kind of really boring subsector of
I
AI
think that's
to
probably
figure out.
right. And there's you know this probably, but just because there's an insane, like, monumental technology doesn't mean that there's gonna be commercial returns, and the classic example of that is the airplane, that net, almost all of the airline
Oh,
companies
yeah,
have made no
true.
money. Like, the Wright brothers, they
Yeah,
did
no, so
fine,
true.
they made some money, but, like, if you think, "Oh, the person who discovered flight would be the richest person on planet Earth." No, they were not. They're
Right.
I mean, I'm sure they
Yeah.
and I know the story. They made money, but, like, they were never, like, super wealthy, like Elon Musk type wealthy. They were, like, really,
That's
really good
neat.
plumbing business wealthy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, I mean that's interesting, right? I was I was really bored one night in Ithaca, New York, and I read the story of Ezra Cornell, right, and
Okay.
hotels. And it's just truly fascinating. Like it was all based on kind of sewage, like the whole concept of basically shared
Mm,
toilets. So a whole range of people had done interesting innovations in toilets and hotels, but at the time, basically, you'd go to a hotel, salesman would go to a hotel, and they wouldn't have their own lavatory, their own washroom. And then he came up with the innovation, okay, basically a shared lavatory, right? And that was a big deal, right? So then you could place the hotel rooms adjacent to the lavatory in a way where there was cost savings. So it's kind of basically a business model innovation off the back of all of these other really interesting plumbing innovations, which really, and then of course, killed it after that. But that's just really interesting, your point about flight. Like you could look back on the greatest innovations in history, maybe fire would be one. But and others, and you'd think, okay, well, who benefited from the commercialization of that? Really
it
interesting.
really historically has not been United or Southwest and like American. Like a lot of there's a long tail of like airline companies that just didn't work. Just eventually opened and closed their doors. Um,
Yeah,
and I kind
yeah,
of
absolutely.
wonder. I know a lot of people are betting a lot on AI, but I kind of wonder like, are the models going to go that way? Like, eventually, is the
Yeah,
model gonna be, like, almost very, very similar. There's almost no differentiation. Why would I pay for this model? Because model A, I can get for basically free. Like, I kind of wonder about
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Is there gonna be
It is fascinating. I mean, I'm at the University of Toronto in Toronto. Some people say it's the birthplace of AI, right? This is where we had Jeffrey Hinton. We still do. He occupies this palatial unit at the university, and it's it's hot right now. But what I've done is I've postured myself in between two camps of people who are tech evangelists about AI running cities, quite literally, and they swear, and these are really bright people, right? Running cities, running the whole podcast ecosystem. So there's no one
Oh,
like
geez.
Alex doing this stuff. Yeah. But then there's the other people who have the P doom factor of 99 or whatever, who are just saying it's going to be the end of the world. Also incredibly bright people. And I just like to listen to both perspectives. I don't know the answer on that side of things. I can't figure out the whole distillation thing and whether the Chinese companies are going to subsume the American ones. Um, but I have no doubt that it is changing productivity. Um, it's changing the nature of entrepreneurship. One of the ways it's changing entrepreneurship is it's making it more, um, it's making the opportunity to be a solo entrepreneur in a lot of different fields be more
Yes.
accessible. And that's kind of cool.
Yes. I definitely agree with that. Um, I don't think AI is gonna take podcasting anytime soon because I don't think humans are really all that excited to listen to, like, AI talk or, like, AI art or,
No,
like how about this one? Do you wanna watch AIs, like, compete in sports? No, I don't wanna do that. Do you wanna watch 2 AIs compete
well,
in chess against each other? No.
no, no. I
But I wanna
mean,
watch 2
no,
2
I don't
men,
think so.
like Magnus and someone else,
Magnus, yeah, that guy's
but
fascinating.
the AI is
Yeah, he's a
better than
personality.
them at chess, but I still don't care, right? So, I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah, yeah, it's like Jeopardy's the same, right? When IBM posted IBM Watson that had sort of bested the human, it was the same deal. I don't really care about watching, IBM Watson. I wanted Alex Trebek and the excitement
It better be
of
able to beat
the
them. It could just go to the
librarian.
internet, you know? I could beat the
Uh,
test too if you gave me
right.
internet access. So talk to me about the entrepreneurial addiction. What is that? What does that mean? Am I addicted? Am I an addict?
Yeah. Well, addiction is, hey, it's a human condition, and we all have some manner of addiction. It just depends on the degree to which it debilitates us, right? So, look, coffee is only an addiction if you can't leave the house with, say you got an important meeting and you'll skip your meeting because you need to down whatever 4 cups of coffee. That can become an addiction. Yeah, so the idea here is that for a lot of us, chasing that next that next high, whether it's the bigger sale, the bigger customer, the next recognition, can become an
Hmm.
addiction. And that, and we do, like, the data bear it out too, right? So um, substance use and addictions is at least 3 times more prevalent among entrepreneurs than comparable
Do you think
populations.
that's
They
a
do
chicken or
have
an egg problem? Like, is entrepreneurship stressful so they
it's
drink, or is it they're just more extreme
it's
people, more risk-taking people?
definitely more risk-taking people. So the entrepreneurs manifest a couple in the ocean framework within psychology. Like, so they manifest more O, which is openness to new
Mhm.
experiences, and more N, which is more, essentially, more neuroticism. Like, we were kind of wired a little bit differently. Now, when it comes to the substances, it's kind of interesting. And it's pretty controversial, this topic, when people get into it. So one of the controversial points is that many people have observed that for some entrepreneurs, actually taking certain substances can, for for a certain type of work, actually make you more competent and good at that type of work for a
Hell
while.
yeah.
Um, so I'm sensitive with imparting that wisdom, but at the same time, there's no doubt that, you know look, the experience of chasing. I mean, this, right? Like, it is a real rush, to get your first deal. Like, whether it's whatever your markers of success are, your first million, now it's $4 million in ARR, or whatever the investor community is looking at these days, and get your margins where they need to go to get to profitability and scale. So yeah, it can definitely be addictive. The issue is whether that addiction is debilitating. And so what I talk about in my book is all my dad's research in dopamine receptors and how that affects people who are risk takers.
Have you looked into the link of people who have a history of substance abuse and then their like next career? Because I have personally seen
It's interesting.
that people who have a history of substance abuse, they go into sales and they're great salespeople because they're like
Okay.
chasing it. Like, I actually know like more than one person who has like moved on from hard drugs and now they're a salesperson and they're like, I just basically juxtapositioned my addiction from hard drugs to sales.
Yeah, it's a really interesting, on an anecdotal level. I certainly know that. I don't have any data to support it. Like, if this substance use then sort of triggers a certain type of pursuit. I was always, I mean, I like to joke. I was at IBM for a few years early in my career, and back then, knowing how to use PowerPoint was really important. So when I left IBM, I would say that the two skills that were imparted to me the most were, when I was young, was, okay, how to use PowerPoint digital, like, decently. And then also, I had such incredible admiration and respect for the best salespeople at IBM. They were just extraordinary, and I still reach out to them from time to time. They are, look, it is a unique beast, the person who just loves every element of sales, and that's all they want to do.
Oh yeah, that most definitely. So that addiction, is it the ongoing pursuit of the same business, or do you also see quite a lot of people will transition from business A to business B and business C? Because I see that a lot around the people that I know.
Oh, 100%. Like, so the addiction is to repeat to get the same high. And as you know, in addiction, right, the first high is always the highest high. You
Yes.
can never get so high as your
Mhm.
highest high. So same thing with entrepreneurship addiction. So you're what like what dopamine in the brain is, right? Is it's the chemical and the receptor that coats certain experiences with salience and meaning for you, right? So if you grew up and you had an early memorable experience that coded building something, like whether it's building a derby thing, or helping build a dock, or help craft something musically, a
Mhm.
band, that the experience of building something is your dopaminergic lift, and that's what you get really excited about. And that's often that experience, which a ton of people have, that then translates into a life of always chasing building stuff. And that that isn't necessarily a company. It could be, something kind of artistic. But chasing that, I see it with writers and authors a lot, actually. It's pretty similar, that
Mm.
experience. You're always chasing that next one, that next one, that next one.
Yeah, and I see that occurring with entrepreneurs, um, to their detriment in that they will not follow through on the current thing that they are doing, and they will leave that basically prematurely. And the way I've heard it explained is the first time you leave whatever job or career or college and you go out and you start this thing, you get this big dopamine hit, right? Like you get this real excitement.
Yeah.
I'm doing it. I'm finally starting the business. I told my boss, I'm out of here and now I'm starting this business, and you get this giant hit of excitement. And then 2 months, 3 months, 12 months sets in and you're like, I'm not getting that hit of excitement anymore. I've got to change it again. So like and then you
Right.
boom, you change and you get the hit of excitement. Like I have friends who've done this 3 or 4 times and abandoned like really nice, good, profitable businesses in exchange for like another business that's fine or equally profitable, or like there's an equal amount of opportunity. It's like not really better, not really worse. It's a very similar situation, or it could be worse situation sometimes. But they changed, and I'm like, why? Stop doing that.
Yeah. Like, I mean, this is classic, right? So the your highest dopamine hit as an entrepreneur is when you start telling your friends and your family about what you're doing. Like this is when people just and it because you got it hidden inside, and then you kind of display it. And then so yeah, you're chasing that same dopamine hit. And nowadays, of course, with the everybody clapping on each other on social media, it's a big whenever you have your announceable, people love it, right? So yeah, it's a repeat phenomenon. I must say I'm guilty of that too. This is especially common among kind of founder mutt-like entrepreneurs who always have 12 or 25 things or ideas going on. Investors, like I find savvy investors who I've gotten to know over the years, they're very mindful of that
Mm.
phenomenon among to scattered entrepreneurs. So they want to see a co-founder team where they at least have somebody like Alex on the team who can make sure that they keep going and don't abandon ship really too prematurely. I think that's a sign, I think, of a wise
Mm.
investor.
You've probably heard this research, where they would take like a pulse or poll of people like as they were going through like a night out, like going out to have drinks or going out to a club or bar. And the highest rated point of the night consistently is before everyone goes out. Like when you're getting ready
Oh
and like
yeah,
everyone's
right,
excited, like possibilities are endless kind of thing. That's the peak of
right,
excitement. And then like it kind of just trickles down like as the night goes on until it's over. And that's kind of exactly what
yeah,
you're saying, right?
yeah.
Like I'm launching, possibilities are endless, and then it's like excitement wanes after that.
You're reminding me of my university days where in Canada, right? To the extent people speak French, like the guys would go out, the ladies wouldn't show up, and then you'd keep hopping to different clubs and bars or whatever, and the common expression was "la nuit est jeune," right? The night is still
Mhm.
young,
Yep,
right? You always want the night to be
yep.
young. So it's similar phenomenon in I guess yeah nightclub scene and business environment. It is fascinating. There is a wonderful book. Uh, I gave it I gave it a very strong public endorsement about by the founder of Sleep Country. I don't know if you know this story, and it's about how he became silently addicted to crack
Mm,
cocaine over 1,000 days. It's got 1,000 days. Oh, it's called Cracked Up. Okay, and it is such a great insight into addiction and entrepreneurship at the same time, because it really helps you understand that kind of exhilarating experience and how someone could naturally fall into that terrain.
Interesting. So, how would you coach somebody that, like you said, you've met so many entrepreneurs that have too many ideas? I got plenty of ideas. I got a notebook full of ideas. I'm a big advocate of writing your business ideas down, because sometimes they come and they just flutter away, and you're like, I don't even, I didn't even notice it. But I also think that the habit becomes, better at you coming up with business ideas, or you actually seeing the opportunities out there. Not saying to act on all of them, but there's no harm to write them down. How would you kinda, like, coach someone or think about these entrepreneurs that have so many ideas, like, focusing or maybe even picking the right thing to focus upon? Because that's probably the harder question.
Yeah, Alex, good question. I think about this a lot because I often wonder whether the traditional advice is necessarily, or the obvious advice is necessarily the right advice. I think that the reality of entrepreneurship for a lot of us is that things pivot, right? So your business model is never static. It's going to change, that kind of thing. So I think there's a lot of it comes in entrepreneurship education that, okay, you may have product market fit on paper or on a blackboard or on, in your AI sort of
Mhm.
chatbot vision statement, but that necessarily is going to drift and it's going to change, right? So some of the guidance I like to give people is first you got to talk about it. There's too many young people going around with ideas and they don't talk to people
Mm.
about it. Um, I feel that it's kind of like writing a book. You have to have a business idea that excites you enough so that every day you continuously have um, new pieces of the puzzle that you're trying to work on. Like whether it's a new post-it note that you want to put down to remember to supplement your business plan with. I feel it has to be the idea that gets you excited, that is uniquely suited to you and your passions. It's not to suggest that passion is the only thing, um, but I think it is like I talk to a lot of young people who are aspiring. A lot of them are intimidated, I think. For example, if they don't have technical experience, they feel like they can't pursue a technical startup entirely. They put that all aside. They oftentimes they may be passionate about something innovative or a new solution in the trades, but because that's not as sexy in their mind among investors, that they may kind of pull away from it. So like kind of disabusing people of these sort of stupid myths that we associate, and having people really chase the ideas that they're really excited about. Too many people just get like turned away from entrepreneurship because people say, "Oh, that's a bad idea," or "You're not a natural," kind of thing. And so it's a lot of it's the psychological stuff around fighting the bullies or the nasty people who want to protect you from going on
Oh,
this
yeah, for
path.
sure.
I don't know. You tell me. Like, what do you
The
like to tell
advice that I
people?
give most people is to start something. Like, don't overthink
Oh,
it.
yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah.
let's
Good
not
idea.
think ourselves, into oblivion. What we do today, we don't have to do for the next 50 years or 20 years or 2 years. But the issue that I have seen with most most entrepreneurs, right, is
Mm,
they graduate college and they think, I want to start a business. And then they get their first job. And then they get their first boyfriend or girlfriend. And then they get married. And then they get a kid. And then they get, mortgage. And before you know it, they're 34 and they're like, I want to start something, but like, I got all this like stuff. I got all this responsibility. And they never really get off the ground. So I tell people like just start something. Like you don't need to make this, it doesn't need to be perfect. And it doesn't need to be the perfect idea. And maybe this is the wrong advice, but if you've got, like your business, it didn't start with what it was going to be at the end, right? It didn't start with we're going to go public and serve governments and, government contractors. If like that would have been your idea in the dorm room, that'd have been like that's so crazy, like how would we ever get there? It started with like, well, let's just Let's build this thing that's cool. So I would suggest that people start something, whether it's this long-term huge vision, like I'm going to start, you know, Facebook.
Yeah.
I mean, even Zuckerberg, he didn't
Right.
start
Right.
Facebook with the idea it'd be Facebook. He started this thing and like it was kind of cool and I thought it would be something. Um,
There's a way to meet
yeah,
girls and get the phone directories more immediately
start
accessible.
something and then you're going to learn
Right.
so many of these foundational fundamental skills. What I tell everyone is like business is like sports. Like for what reason would you think like you're ready to go play professional sports based on having never done this before? Of course you would not think that that's real. So like it's the same thing in business. You got to be on the freshman team, then the JV team, then the varsity team, then you move up and you play in college and then you work your way back up to the starting, lineup in college and then you can go pro. It's very similar in business. It's hard to skip 8 of those steps and just be like, I started my company 12 months later, I'm selling it. Like that happens, I get it, but you hear about that story because it's shocking and unique, not because it happens all the time.
Right. Yeah, we either celebrate like spectacular success really quickly or spectacular failure.
Yes.
The financial media love to celebrate those two, but the window of reality is very, very different. And I like this is why I keep talking about like pre-entrepreneurial messaging as being a big part of what we need to fix if we want to create a society which really kindles entrepreneurship in all ways. Like our entrepreneurial messaging to people can't be, oh yeah, you're gonna strike it rich off your first at bat, or something kind of equally implausible. So that's really good. That's really good advice, especially when you're young, right? And I've seen too many people exactly like you say, right? You kind of 10 years later, they had told you 10 years before that they were going to strike out and do
Mhm.
something, and then you see them in the same place. And you go, hey, what's going on? And it doesn't. And it's sort of it's the opposite extreme of the same person you just described who's got too many ideas and keeps succeedingly going to the next, right? So you got to be
The
somewhat
nice part
balanced,
about
I
the person
guess.
who at least is going from idea to idea is like they at least started and they pretty much are going to be an entrepreneur. Like maybe that, I don't know, maybe they'll go 3 or 4 or 5 ideas and bail out and be like, it's time for me to just get a regular job. That probably does happen. But what I would think is once an entrepreneur, kind of always an entrepreneur, you kind of just go, yeah, like, well, why would I like go work for somebody else? Like, especially if you have one business that is kind of successful, you unfortunately anchor yourself up to like, well, I was making $100,000 when I was like running my own business. Like, why would I go take a job with
Hmm.
60,000? Um, maybe that's a good
Yeah,
thing. Maybe
yeah.
it's not.
It's easier if your only metric is money, but like if you're driven by autonomy, which is one of the principal drivers of so many entrepreneurs, you can't capture that. If it's really hard to capture that in a big organization. I mean, you might be lucky, you might have a manager who's really open to that. But yeah, once you taste it, it's really hard. I The other thing I like to recommend to young people if they have the opportunity is actually to work for a huge bureaucratic
Uh,
machine at the same time. So they see they they see how difficult it is to work for the beast, right? So if you've got a co-op in college or something, you can work for a government and then also do your own thing another time. So you see both. So then your rock can be either the autonomy you get from having started your own thing, or the brutal just negativity that you get from having worked for that big faceless bureaucracy.
mm. Neil, what's going on with the mental health of entrepreneurs? I see you've done a ton of work around this. Are entrepreneurs more mentally healthy than other people? Are they less mentally healthy? Are there any like patterns that end up popping up often? Like maybe talk me through that.
Yeah, so the research on this is pretty early, but we do have some good data points. So from perspective of bipolar, right? So what used to be called manic
Mm.
depression, entrepreneurs are twice as likely to be bipolar. Then there's something called bipolar 2. It's where your highs are not quite as high, and this is where entrepreneurs tend to be really strong or overrepresented. There is suicidal ideation, obviously a very serious thing, and suicide risk
Is that
itself.
Is
twice as
that
high among
tied
entrepreneurs.
to financial failure? Do we have any metrics that, like, as the dollars go
I
down, the likelihood of that occurs, or
Not
could it be
necessarily,
someone,
no,
who's having a lot of
actually.
success? Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, we know these folks, right? Kate Spade, a whole range of really extraordinarily accomplished individuals financially. The guy from Zappos, Tony Hsieh, and a whole range of other, uh, you know, incredibly co-founder of Reddit as well, extraordinarily successful individuals. Then we also have among entrepreneurs, um, uh, well, there's mental health breaks itself down into a number of areas, but we talk about burnout, for
Mhm.
example, in the media a lot, but it's kind of interesting. My own research shows that we talk about burnout of employees about 6 to 10 times more often than the burnout of founders, which is just endless. Like nobody really talks about just how hard it is to be an employer, to sign the front and back of checks.
Do you think that's
So look,
because,
yeah,
there's just not a lot of sympathy for the entrepreneurship and entrepreneurial class? Like, "Hey, dude, like, sure, it's mile 23 of the marathon, but, like, you signed up for it, man. Like, you knew what you were doing."
yeah, I think there's a lot of, I think there's some of that for sure. I think there's also just a lot of ignorance among
Totally.
politicians, among media, about what it means to be an entrepreneur. Like, I've often thought that it would be an incredible qualification. Imagine if, as a matter of qualifying to run for local city office, you had to have at least had one entrepreneurial
I
venture.
I would
So to
love
know,
that. I would love that.
yeah, imagine. So you knew the experience of actually employing people and laying off people. I get really scared when I see, it doesn't matter how impressed I am or whatever I think of their political vision, of someone who's never actually employed someone, never had to lay someone off, not being able to make payroll on a certain month. So, and the reverse is true too, right? So I think a lot of it is just ignorance of how difficult it is, and a certain status obsession that we have among certain qualifications versus others. But the good news, Alex, is that, look, we are moving toward a society, in my view, and other people feel the same way, where all paths are leading back to entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is only going to grow and grow and grow, especially as the solo entrepreneur phenomenon keeps taking off. And I think now it's certainly in the university environment, people are respecting that narrative more, I think. So I do see positive trends around people embracing entrepreneurs of all types. Like it doesn't really matter what the area is.
Yeah, when you talk about, like, politicians, and not just politicians, but also just, like, general public, what really frustrates me is when I start to hear people talk about, like, me, like I'm the enemy, like I'm the problem, and I'm like, "I am so far away from being the problem." Like, I would love it if I was the
Yeah,
problem. I would love it if I was getting
yeah,
these $100 million contracts from the government. I am so far away from being the
sure.
problem with our capitalistic society that, like, you're not addressing really the root problem. Like, Google, Facebook, if you have issues with them, take it up with them. If you have issues with Lockheed Martin, take
Right.
it up with them. Me and my 45 employees, I love when people are like, they're not paying like enough taxes. I'm like, please tell me what they're doing because I don't know what they're doing to avoid taxes. But like my accountants continue to tell me there are no loopholes to like avoid taxes. Like
Sure.
I'm paying millions of dollars in taxes. Like, where are the loopholes for me? I would love to hear about them. But
Well, look, you
I'm
yeah,
not the problem. Like and actually, I've heard Scott Galloway talk about this. Like the
yeah.
like hyper earners with W-2s, those are the people who get like really hammered with taxes. W-2 in the United States, like basically like a wage
Yeah.
rate income, like a standard income.
Yeah.
Those are the people who get hammered. The people who are running hedge funds, they're getting off like with great deals. So yeah, that is where I start to get frustrated where they're like, these business owners are
Oh,
greedy. And I'm like, greedy? I just don't want to like go into bankruptcy,
yeah,
guys. Like,
100%. Like, and so people don't know the data, right? So the data. So when you look at when you look at entrepreneurs, because most ventures fail, right?
Absolutely.
So whether it's 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10, people
Year
debate the
1,
math,
year
but
2, year 5, year 10, the
exactly.
every year you go on, the odds continue to be stacked in your favor more.
Right. And then so if you depart entrepreneurship, if your business blows up and you have to take a wage earning a job, if you don't have an opportunity, your your competitiveness in the job market, in certainly in America, is way lower than someone with your equivalent education. So the odds are really stacked against you. And if you're an entrepreneur founder, I mean, you are taking on so many financial risks. And you're working way harder than anybody else, right? So when you actually look at your hourly wage, it's not even comparable. So people who don't understand this, they just don't understand it. And also, I think too, when people criticize entrepreneurship or whatever, or blame entrepreneurs for certain things, I think they're rolling together professional CEOs, right? Like professional CEOs that move, okay, they started up in a traditional corporate environment, went to MBA school and worked their way up and became a CEO of like Fortune 500 company one, and then moved over to become CEO of Fortune 500 two. So like that's not, those people are very different from entrepreneurs. And I think people mix them together in some weird
Mhm.
way. Um, uh, so yeah, that's why I love entrepreneurs, because we're mutts and everyone's got new ideas. I've actually never, of all environments that I'm in, I feel that entrepreneurship is the most tolerant of different perspectives, different people, as opposed to any other environment that I have traveled in.
That's interesting. Haven't really thought much about that, but I think that's probably true. It's like, hey, if you can do at a certain level, like the success sort of speaks, like your business either works or it doesn't. As long as you're not doing anything illegal or immoral, like,
That's right. My rule is on that point, on the do something advice. My only rule when I'm talking to young people is, as long as it's not increasing morbidity or mortality, right? Then you're good,
I'd have to
right?
find this book that I
Uh,
read. It was like 3 rules for living a good life, and one of, like, his rules was, like, don't go to jail. And he, like, told, story after
right.
story of, like, these, successful people, but they, like, just bent the rules a little bit and went to jail. And it was like, everything's kinda blown up if you do that. Yeah. We pay
Yeah.
all of our taxes, and we do everything above the board. It's just not worth it. Like, some of
Now
my
you're
friends are funny about that. Like, my one friend's a farmer, and he's like, "Ah, you're not doing a good enough job at hiding it." And I'm like, "You," I'm like, "You're barking up the wrong tree, my man." Like, it's don't start that one.
that
Um, but
that's
what
funny.
about, so mental health? Like, what are the things that you commonly see with entrepreneurs? I know you talked about burnout, you talked about suicide. Are there ways
Yeah.
are there red flags, or are there ways to avoid some of those things?
Yeah, so I mean, we talk about it at the individual level, we talk about it at the organizational level. Also, people talk about it at the system level. Um, System level policy ideas are kind of interesting. Like, I'll give you one that comes up from time to time. It was actually President Trump who first mentioned it, believe it or not, in his 2016 run, but then abandoned it after 24 hours. Is the idea of not having quarterly earnings, so like you have just biannual earnings, so you're not chasing the
Hmm.
quarterly. It's kind of interesting ideas at the system level to just slow things down. Anyway, at the
I
individual
think
level, there's a
there's
lot.
2 sides to that, right? Like, one would be, yes, you're not chasing that short term, like, hit of profitability. So, like, United Healthcare doesn't need to deny your claim because they need to make this quarter.
Right.
But also, like, you have 6 months longer time horizon for a company to just, like, do some tomfoolery with their, like, profit and
Oh,
loss.
100%. Like, yeah, you can argue it both ways. I agree with you, right? And then if you believe in the idea that short-term operational excellence is just as important as long-term operational excellence, which I do believe in basically. I think, lean toward quarterly. But then at the individual level, right, there's a lot of things to basically slowing things down, right? So obviously the things people talk about: journaling,
Mhm.
meditation, laughter, um, uh, spending time with friends, having a bit of a phalanx of support, a support group that you can go to whenever you're feeling. a little bit off, or what's called dysregulated. Um, and what works for one person does not work necessarily for other people. There's a whole movement within entrepreneurship toward Stoic philosophy, which is kind of interesting, right? A type of philosophy that
Definitely.
is really focuses you on living a virtuous life and being in the moment, very present, right? Which is aligned with Buddhism and other philosophic
Got
movements like
someone
Vedanta.
bought me
Oh, there
all
you
of
go.
the Ryan Holiday series right here. Yeah.
Yeah, so you know this stuff, right? Exactly. So there's the individual level, and I'm a big believer, certainly, in immersing yourself in different philosophic traditions because they all are connected and they are a way of slowing yourself down. Um, I think, uh, you know, I mean, you have to look at your team. So one of the things that's kind of interesting when you get into the neuroscience of all this stuff is there's a lot of really interesting frameworks about what motivates people and what coats different people with dopamine. So there's something called the SCARF framework. I don't know if
No.
you've heard of this one. I stumbled upon this one a while back, and I think it's really interesting. And it's a neuroscience framework where called SCARF,
Yeah.
SCARF. And the idea is, okay, everyone's either an S, which is status, okay? C is control or certainty. A is autonomy. That would be really big for
Hmm.
entrepreneurs. Fourth is R, which is relatedness. And the fifth is F, which is fairness, a sense of fairness. And so each individual on your team um, will have a dopamine hit for whatever whatever type they are, right? So if they're a status
Hmm.
person, and this is really important, and I only learned this way too late. If someone's a status person, look, there's nothing wrong with craving status. You just have to call people for what they are. For whatever reason, status is important to them. So that means an important sounding job title. That means a whole range. And if they're not given that, then it's almost like physical assault. It's very, very
Mm.
interesting. Control people. They need to feel like they have control over the outcomes. Autonomy, people, speaks for itself. Relatedness, okay, it's more about the social community of your
Mm.
workplace. F, fairness, okay, it's more about how people are treated, and if they see someone in their team being poorly treated, then they feel bad. So this all like helps you design a team where you don't want to put, for example, two C people, two control people in the same
Mm.
team, because that will screw up people's dopamine dysregulation. So anyway, the point is that you can play with these neuroscience ideas in the management both of yourself and of your
Mm.
company.
Yeah, that is really interesting. Yeah, I can see how if you put, two S's together, both people want status. And it's like, hey, we can only have one, chief operations officer, and all people are,
Oh, it's
clamoring for that. It's kind of going to be a challenge.
It is a big problem. It is a big challenge, actually. I mean, and it's interesting in a public company, you get into title challenges that you don't have in a private company. So in private companies, there's this whole title inflation
Yes.
phenomenon, which is happening
Yes.
more and more these days. And for interesting reasons, young people are, often have reasons for clamoring for a more impressive sounding title. Um, Sometimes it's totally dysfunctional, but whatever. Anyway, and sometimes that title doesn't actually match what they're doing, right? But
Certainly.
when you're in a public company environment, you have to give someone a title that actually corresponds to what it is they're doing, or else you can get in trouble.
Interesting. I don't know if I knew that. Yeah, we certainly did that. We were a 2 or 3-year-old
Yeah.
company. We had a CEO and a CFO and a chief HRO. Like, we were none of those
Right.
things. We were 5 guys in a room, packing
It's all
boxes.
good. It's
Yeah.
all
But right,
it's
to your
all
point.
good. Everyone needs a C title.
But,
It's all good.
if I would go back and coach myself on that, I probably would say, like, maybe just don't do that, um, because then I've had people come to me and say this multiple times, like, "Well, I think I'm just underpaid for a CFO," and it's like, uh,
Exactly. Exactly. That's one of the ways you
well,
get burned. Yeah.
of what company of AT&T, yeah, you're certainly underpaid for the CFO of AT&T. And that person probably has like
Right,
4
right,
degrees and is a CPA and a lawyer. Um,
right.
but yeah, you're underpaid for that role. For like a person who does finance for a 12-person company, like, I don't know, maybe, maybe not,
Yeah,
you know?
yes,
So
yeah. This is a
well, and
challenge.
also,
Yeah,
and we had someone come in and we didn't, heed their advice, but one of the things they recommended was like, I'd probably go in and like just change a bunch of people's titles. Like, because if you're building this organization for
interesting.
like 60 to 70 people, like you're probably going to need to like insert some people in as the company moves to kind of the next level. And those people, like, you need to build some extra layers, and these people that you have at certain layers are not doing the title that you're actually asking them to do. And that's a lot harder to take away someone's title or downgrade someone's title than to just be like, we're not doing chief executive officer, we're not doing chief financial officer right now. We're going to be like, very low end. But of course, you don't know that when you have 7 or 8 people.
Yeah, it's the title thing is really fascinating. There's no doubt there's title inflation right now. One of the things I found is that um, when you are building a company and you have that one-on-one and the person tells you that they don't care about title, that's often and is open to the idea of saying, okay, yeah, absolutely, you bring on more senior people, I'm happy to take down my title. That's often a good signal
Yes.
that they're in it for the long run. They got real skin in the game. But anyway, it's an interesting problem to
You
have.
talked about laughter. I was actually just at somebody's business, I don't know, 2 months ago, and one of their core values was like laughter or laugh more often. And I was like, that's a really good
Yes,
core value. Because we take ourselves super seriously in business, but like at the end of the day, almost every business is just like some kind of
totally
unimportant
dysfunctional.
thing that's like not really that
Yeah,
important. Like very few businesses are literally curing cancer. So it's
100%.
not that
Yeah,
important, really.
yeah.
We had a client who used to say, "Look, we're just selling protein bars. Like, we're not curing cancer here." So it's like that was always a good framework for me.
Right.
Like, whenever we started to like take ourselves super seriously, it's like we're just selling stuff on the internet, and most of the stuff people can go
That
without.
that's a that's funny. Yeah. Did you ever the do you ever watch
Of course, yeah,
Seinfeld, the
yeah.
reruns? Yeah. Are you familiar with the one, the opposite? Uh, where Costanza does the opposite of his inclination.
No, I haven't seen that
Um,
one.
Oh yeah, no, it's so he's really, awkward with women,
Yes,
right? So he he plans, okay, I'm going to do the opposite, and then what he does is he goes up to a woman and says, look, I'm unemployed, I live with my mother. I can't remember a couple other things he said. He's completely the opposite of his inclination, which is to build himself up and give himself a fake name, a fake job, and it
yeah,
works, right? It works. So in the context of when you're down, oftentimes just doing the opposite, just and laughing at yourself. It is amusing. It is absurd. It truly is absurd. And some of the the observations that you have about the bizarro behavior of people taking themselves too
yeah,
seriously should make
yeah.
you laugh. 15 minutes of laughter every day if
Do
you can
you
do it.
get the impression that entrepreneurs are, as a whole, more emotional people or less emotional people? Because this is something that I've kind of thought about.
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know. Um, if you were asking me that a few years ago when I was in the weeds of the research, okay, so my book, Accelerated Minds, was published in 2023, and then in Japan, Entrepreneurship Addiction, published in 2025. The weeds of it, I would say yes, like because they're often more there's a lot of data just on emotional dysregulation. However, um, the the signature the signature trait of an entrepreneur is pretty counterintuitive, is they're chasing control. They want to have control over the outcomes. That's why you become an entrepreneur, because you crave autonomy and you want to have control over your outcomes. But the challenge, of course, is that you can only control so many
Mhm.
outcomes. very, very difficult. So you're always, but oftentimes people who do control their outcomes tend to be very stolid, unemotional people. So short answer is I don't know the answer to that question. What do you think? Do you have a sense?
I can't speak for all entrepreneurs. I guess looking at other, I don't know. I've met certainly very emotional entrepreneurs and very, very unemotional entrepreneurs. What my sense of it is that what entrepreneurship has done to me is make me less emotional. In that, so
Mhm.
many things have happened to me while running this business that I look back on them and almost none of them mattered, like in the grand scheme of things. And there were things that I got really excited about that eventually just became kind of nothing. And then there were things that were really frustrating and upsetting at the time that also weren't really that big of a deal. So, like back when I was dating, I had more than one girl say, "You're like emotionless." And I'm like, "Well, I don't really think that that's true." I don't think they were saying that to be complimentary, by
Right.
the way. Um, and I was
Right.
like, "I don't really think that's true. I just don't get that high up or low because I've been through so many things that in hindsight I thought they were one thing and they winded up being another." It's kind of like the Chinese proverb, like we'll see, like the man's son falls off a horse and breaks his leg, and they say, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry," and he says, "We'll see what happens." And then the army comes, they're recruiting men for the army, and he's got a broken leg so he can't go. Right, so it's like you don't really know if this is a good thing or a bad thing. So that's what my 2 cents is, that I feel like entrepreneurship over the last decade plus has made me less emotional, because it's always like, well, I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing yet, let's just keep working forward.
Yeah, it's interesting. I would concur. Like with me, I'd say I've become less reactive in the moment. So I can take a breath and realize, okay, I can this experience that I'm having, I can think about all the similar experiences and just not react as quickly. So I think there is something to what you're saying. Um, I don't know if being less reactive makes me less emotional. Anyway, it's a very interesting question. Um, One of the things I often think about, and only having studied entrepreneurship, is how 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 the study of entrepreneurship doesn't look at the family
Mm,
unit, and I really believe it should, right? Because in our house, we're a family of entrepreneurs. We have many. My wife's siblings, brothers are all entrepreneurs, and similar on my side. So like you need to think about the family unit because oftentimes you're taking a risk and your spouse is kind of accommodating that in different ways. And I think the study of entrepreneurship would really benefit from looking at the families. Like I'd be really interested in understanding whether families headed by entrepreneurs are happier.
mm.
I'm not sure. Like I have a lot of theories around that, but I haven't seen anything in the data.
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know. My 2 cents, again, I'm a biased entrepreneur. My 2 cents would be
Right.
that those families would be happier. Here's the way I'm logicking that out. You said it, like being an entrepreneur is all about control. And I guess I don't think of that in a bad way, or like I'm gonna control my family. I think of it more so as if
Right.
my son or daughter comes to me and goes, "Hey dad, I wanna be a soccer player." I can go, "All right, well I can teach you the things that would have to happen for you to make this a reality. I can help you control this outcome." I think I think a lot of people take too much of a sense of helplessness over their life. Like, "Oh, I got a flat
Yeah.
tire and, oh, everything happens bad to me." It's like, let's just, again, not get too high or low. All right, let's call AAA. Let's change it. We don't have AAA. Let's call someone else. Let's flag somebody down. Let's figure this thing out. Just to, like give yourself,
Yeah.
you and your family a sense of control. Now, I think there's the opposite side of that where mom or dad never comes home, and like dad's never here because he's doing the business thing, and like I know he's working hard to make money for us, but like we never see him. Like, is life really better because dad makes an extra $20,000 a year, but we never see him? I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, that's interesting. I think one of the beauties of entrepreneurship in a family environment is you're modeling optimism. because inherently as an entrepreneur, you have to be
Absolutely.
optimistic, right? In the face of
Nope,
terrible,
nobody starts a business saying, "This is definitely gonna fail, but let's just try it," you know?
yeah, 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 exactly. So if you come from the view, which I do, that the most like, okay, I would say among the traits that are really important to offer your children or model for your children are curiosity and empathy and optimism. Like, I think optimism is such a valuable trait to model. So I think if people see it around you, they're really attracted to it, I think, and it can be like a magnet. So I would have the same hypothesis as you. Like, I think, yeah, probably the stresses of an entrepreneurial family are pretty big, but at the same time, I suspect that as a unit, they'd pretty be happier, but I don't know. I mean, I got to tell you, it's pretty interesting I had when you write a book, and I mean, it's kind of interesting. It's really taken off in Japan, and I have some
Yeah, I
theories
was
as to
gonna
that.
ask
In
because
North
you mentioned
America,
it, and I think the title's great in Japan. I think the title in US is good, but I like the Japanese title a little more.
yeah, no, and there's reasons. So in America, it just kind of it did okay, like it did well, but like, yeah, so-called mid-list book. But in Japan, it's taken off. But I got a lot of interesting feedback, and one of the pieces of feedback I got was from an entrepreneur in the trades, actually, and he said that he was so happy that I wrote the book talking about all the challenges of entrepreneurship from a brain perspective, because his wife could finally understand what he was going through, because they had all these difficult communication
Mhm,
pieces. But in Japan, yeah, so in Japan, I think that my theory is that it really has plugged into a cultural zeitgeist in Japan, where it is just this hustle culture, which people recognize needs to be slowed down. Um, Japan has been talking a lot. It's a very interesting culture. We had a partner company in Tokyo, so I would spend time in Japan, and it was very interesting to me seeing how they treat entrepreneurship, and I think it just kind of tapped into something that people wanted to talk about in Japan.
mm. Have you thought at all about, and this is maybe another thing that would merit, like, studying, the dynamic between male and female relations when that entrepreneur is in the picture? Because here's kind of what my where my brain just went.
Uh
Men,
huh.
I think, naturally think a little bit more about finance and finances and supporting the family, and I think we probably still have more men entrepreneurs, right? So I'm guessing that we have more male entrepreneurs and females either who are working or maybe not working in the home. And like it's like you said, like trying to explain to my spouse like how my brain kind of works. I'm kind of trying to do that for my wife because she is not a business person. She works in the medical field, and like my interests and my kind of like day to day is so much different to her. And the things that I'm worried about and stressed out about are like so different from the things that she's worried about and stressed out about. I think that would be sort of an interesting study is like how that
It,
family,
it
that
it
male
is.
female dynamic and
I
marriages
think
would
it's
be
huge.
inflected.
It's huge, right? And that's why I think the study of it is so important, because if you just look at the entrepreneurial unit as the sole individual, as opposed to the wife who maybe she's got a job that can help with the insurance,
That sounds like us. Yeah.
where yeah, and that's very normal, right? And then the guy takes the bigger risks on scaling an enterprise. I think that would be really interesting to study, because I think you're going into it together, right? It's a family unit together that's thinking about these issues. So that's why my hypothesis is that they're closer knit families, because they're sharing this stuff. On the male versus female dynamics, it's interesting, right? So women, at least in Canada and historically in America, I think it's the same now, is numerically, they would actually represent a higher number of entrepreneurs if you include solo artistic entrepreneurs who, for example, are
I
selling
believe that. I
their
believe
stuff
that.
on Etsy or something. But if you look at your scaling entrepreneurs who have companies, you know, 10 plus, 20 plus, 30 plus, um, that's where you get a more male testosterone driven environment. Um, and then of course in the investor community as well, it's that divide is pretty important. I think, scientifically, the way dopamine works in the brain is identical between men and women. I mean, my mom, I'm the son of two scientists, psychiatrist scientists, and my mom studied estrogens in the
Hmm.
brain, so how they affect women, and it's pretty interesting. But they would study dopamine together. They were the famous dopamine duo.
Ah,
And yeah, that's sort of what
that's
they
a
called
good
them. And
nickname. That's a good nickname.
yeah, 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 and it was never on. I should say, by the way, like when my dad discovered the dopamine receptors in the '70s, it was a big, very, very significant scientific breakthrough. It Talk about dopamine was really not the way it is today. It was in near the end of his life. It was all this stuff about social media addiction would come out in the news. He'd often get called for media interviews, but he didn't know anything. He didn't engage in social media, so he
Hmm.
didn't know how to respond. But the way it works in the brain is similar. And so there's no reason to think that women in the similar environments wouldn't behave the same. But I don't really know. Um, I don't really
I
know.
would guess, this is my
Um,
guess, and I actually have heard what you just articulated, that women are much more interested in, like, sort of a lifestyle business. It's like, "This can support my lifestyle."
mhm.
I can work for myself and make an extra 20 or $30,000, but they're like, "I don't need that to go to the next level, or I want it to go to the next level." I would guess that there's 2 things that impact that. One, like motherhood and pregnancy. It's like, I'm more
Yeah,
focused on being a mom and being pregnant. Like, I'm not trying to, like, go out and raise $10,000,000. Eventually, that hits a lot of, women. And then second, I would guess that men are just far more, interested in the status or the, like, net number, because they are seeking
mhm.
women, and they're, like, trying to get women impressed in them, or they believe that women will be impressed in them
Mhm.
based on their entrepreneurship. It doesn't
Yeah,
sound that cool if
maybe.
you're
Yeah.
like, "Yeah, I run, like, a one-man little business where I make, like, little stools out of wood, and I sell that on the side." If I tell a woman that, that's like this guy might be weird. Now, if I tell her I have a
Right.
15-person business where we make, furniture out of wood, she's like, "Oh, that's impressive," right? So, like, that's where my brain is. I don't know. That's a bro
Yeah.
science explanation
Yeah.
there.
Bro science. That's very interesting. That's a good term, by the way. Do people say that? Bro
Yeah,
science? It's
bro
very
science is
interesting.
like,
Uh,
like, kinda not necessarily based on science, a little bit based on, like, what your lived
oh,
experience
bro,
is, like.
indeed, indeed. I think look, it's it makes sense. I've not thought about it before. Um, uh, I think men and women chase status in equal numbers. I think perhaps how status manifests itself among women may be a little bit
Yes, I
different,
would tend
though.
to agree.
I don't know. I just don't know. I'd have to go back to my Emil Durkheim and sociology, but I do think that is really interesting. I don't think enough people have invested uh, sufficient research in the sexes and how they look at entrepreneurship differently. I think that's a really, really, really important area. I mean, another important area of study which needs to be done is immigrant
Oh.
entrepreneurship. It's
Oh,
really
yeah.
interesting. Like, like new. So okay. Like when you write a book, one of the things that's really interesting. I know you do a lot of work with Amazon, so you may find this interesting. Is you never know who your audience is going to be.
Mm.
Never. Like you just do not know. So, unless you're Stephen King or someone and you've got a built-in platform audience and niche and genre, you don't, in a nonfiction narrative, you often don't know who your audience is really going to be. I thought my audience was going to be 50 plus year old guys. But the most heated, the interesting experiences I had were with new immigrant entrepreneurs. Like, because and I have a bunch of theories around all this stuff, but um just so you know, Toronto now has overtaken New York in terms of the percentage of the population that is from every country in the
Mhm.
world that
Mhm.
is first generation immigrant. And so I think that study has to be done as well. There's just different understandings of what entrepreneurship means among different immigration groups, which I think is very important.
Yeah, what's your pulse on why immigrants tend to move towards, entrepreneurship. That's long since
Oh,
been, kind of a stereotype in the
a
United
hundred.
States.
Yeah, and it's true, right? It's a lot of it is just lack of opportunity, like, lack of opportunity, sometimes historically, discrimination. But I think
Makes sense.
I think it's a function, and I think it's a function of often what's valued, right? I mean, um, what's valued in immigrant communities is often hard work and a respect for sometimes what people often see as you say, a boring things, but caring for your family
Mhm.
first and your community. And so I look, I mean, I mean, it's such a big generalization, but I do believe that there is an interesting new immigrant work ethic, but again, you cannot generalize
I think
whatsoever.
there's also a more of a culture of being supportive of like entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship in a lot of other cultures. Like I know that like Chinese Americans, it's very common that other Chinese Americans will fund new businesses for Chinese individuals to come to the United States and like start that convenience store or start that business. I know that's really common, not only here in the United States, but I was just in Belize and they were explaining it like yeah, like once one Chinese person has built like a store, then they try to get other people to come over and they'll help them fund their store. And I was like, that's interesting.
That is interesting. I mean, it does make sense. I mean, it is so much about the community. I mean, we have I don't know if you've seen it was based in Toronto, but it became popular on Netflix. Have you seen Kim's
No, I
Convenience,
haven't.
the TV
No.
show? Oh, it's about a Korean convenience store. It's very, very popular. The TV show, all based in Toronto, where we have a really big growing Korean population with a really impressive work ethic, and it chases that exact theme about the community and how they help each other. So yeah, I definitely think there's something to that. So there's a lot of dimensions of entrepreneurship that are understudied. Is basically I think one of the take homes that I'm hearing from you and from me, and I think it really opens and not only like so they're the same like the brain of entrepreneurs, the science of it, the psychology, also the practical work tools we can use for ourselves in the
Mhm.
workplace. um, for too long I think the study of entrepreneurship has been very I would like strategy
Yeah,
obsessed,
I would
if you know
agree
what I
too.
mean, like Harvard Business Review strategy articles. And I don't get me wrong, those can be very, very helpful and very interesting, but not enough around the psychology. So, so you're doing a marathon. I mean, there's a lot of interesting work on the value and power of being like and acting like an elite
Mhm.
athlete and being an entrepreneur. It's a very similar kind of experience, and they've studied this in the brain. I don't entirely know why, but what you're doing in your path toward marathoning is it's very similar. And the athletic and endorphin and dopamine exuberation that you experience from running and training and competing is very similar to the experience that you'll have running a business, and it helps displace potentially bad inclinations or bad habits that you may want to chase,
Mhm.
right?
All right, Neil, last question. You know I'm an entrepreneur. You've studied a lot about entrepreneurs. Would you have any one piece of advice or recommendation for me that I might be able to apply and use in my career to be as good as I can in all facets?
Alex, I would try to separate yourself from you and objectively observe what you've done. Just your podcasting. How many episodes have you done?
145, 150, probably somewhere in that radius.
150. That is hugely impressive. Like it is just your podcasting little fiefdom empire, let's call it, is a business. Like it is a real business, and you have made a mark. And I think just looking at that objectively from an accomplishment perspective is pretty remarkable. The number of people who you've reached, the number of even if it's just 1% of your listening audience who you've inspired to maybe potentially start a business, can you imagine how powerful that is for you? Like, so what I would tell you, look, I'm not saying this in any, as a clinician or anything, far from that. I'm just saying, if you're ever down, just think about how many people you have helped, either directly or indirectly, just through this podcasting. I think it's incredibly important what you're doing. So I would just say, just think about that as being a rock that you can
That's
consider.
great advice, Neil. But I'm sure that people like me, they think about the next thing. Oh, I ran the marathon. Now I want to run it faster. It's a gift and a curse.
Right. Well, you know what? You may want to try. You may want to try. Oh my gosh, what's that? Oh, what is Race Across America? Have you heard of
That
that
is
one? Have you?
something I've heard of for sure.
Yeah, you start in Clearview, California, or something, and you bike all the way. It,
Oh,
it
yep,
it's
yep.
just
The
it's a little
3,000-mile
nuts.
bike race.
Is that one it
Uh-huh.
is? Yeah. And it's about who gets there first. Anyway, so you can graduate to
Yeah.
that after you've
I
done
don't
the
like
marathon.
biking as much, so I'm gonna stay on 2 feet.
Okay, yeah, good for you. Well, look, thank you, Alex. I really enjoyed our
Thank you,
conversation,
Neil. I appreciate
and
you.
thank you,
Neil, where
man.
can people keep
And
up with you and
yeah,
everything that you got, books and all the things that you're
um,
producing?
yeah, 100%. I mean, I have a website, neilseeman.com. They can check out our my little book company, Sutherland House Experts, or just find me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active there, and I'm happy to talk to folks about this topic. I really find it fascinating.
Awesome. Thank you, Neil. Appreciate you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, you take care. Thank you.